Hello everybody, my name is Jackie and here we are at video 2, cutting video for our second block of our Block of the Month Club. It has been super cold, icy, and we're supposed to get snow now and everything, so perfect weather for staying inside and sewing. So this is what the block looks like when it is completed. I just wanted to show you guys because I did a test block just a minute ago. When this is complete, when the block is complete, it will measure 9.5 inches square, okay? Super cute. What do you guys think? Super cute. Okay, so this is to go over what is going to show up in your kit. So I'm going to go over that really quick. First thing that you'll have is you'll have the green fabric. A lot of you have the strips already cut to the correct width. And then all you'll need to do is just trim it to the correct length, okay? So your green for the grass at the bottom, will need to be 1.25 inches wide. So for those of you who received your green kind of like this, or maybe you received a couple of pieces, this is enough fabric to be able to get all of them. You just need to cut the strips an inch and a quarter. So that's 1 1/4 inch wide, and you need at least 5 of them, okay? And then the next thing you'll get is little yellow squares. Some of you have all the same color, and some of you might have different colors, some darker yellows or whatever. You should have 5 of these in your kit, okay? These are for the window in the center of your barn. And these should already be measured at 2 inches square. Next, you should have already cut 2-inch strips. Some of you might want to check and make sure that they're 2 inches wide, okay? And at the very minimum, 14 inches long. And some of you might have 10-inch wide strips. You should have 2 strips that are the same color. That's for one barn. So you should have 5 different colors for your barn pieces. They should already be cut to width. If they're not, then just trim them down to 2 inches wide. And then in a moment, we'll go over what you need to cut those pieces out at to get your pieces for the block, okay? And then the roof fabric, these should measure 2 3/4 inches. That's the rectangle that we use to make the roof of the barn. 2 1/4 inches wide by 5 inches long, okay? And most of you should already have them cut to size. And some of you might have received ones that have this serrated edge. Just know that the 2 1/4 inches is measured from the outer edge, the top of those peaks, to the other end, okay? So you shouldn't have to trim those off. Just go ahead and sew them. Just line up the edge of your fabric with the edge of that, or just use the flat edges for lining up if that's easier for you. Some of you might have received 5-inch or 6-inch squares. There should be at least 5 of these in your kit. And what you'll need to do for that is make sure it's 5 inches wide, and then 2 3/4 inches wide is what you'll need to cut for your roof pieces, okay? And like I said, some of you might have received a couple of pieces that are the same color, but they're narrower. Those 2 pieces go for 1 block, okay? All right, so when you're cutting your pieces for the barn, we're going to do that really quick before cutting anything else out. Your strip, you need 3 different measurements from this strip of fabric, okay? You need, for the barn, you need 5 inches wide. Make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, you need 1 rectangle, or so for each barn, you need 1 rectangle that's 5 inches wide. You need 2 rectangles, so you're going to make 2 cuts that are 3.5 inches wide, so 2 of those. And then you need a 2 by 2 inch square, okay? And that you should have a little bit remaining, okay? So you always start with the biggest cut first, okay? And making sure that these strips, like I said, some of them might have come out a little bit wider. You're going to want to trim that down. Or if you want to keep it wide and then put your block together and then trim down as you go, you can do that also. I'm actually going to show in this, when we're putting these blocks together, I'm actually going to show you how you can do what's called chain piecing. This block is a perfect setup for chain piecing your pieces together. And that requires you to have all of the pieces for all of your blocks in piles ready to go when you're sewing, and you'll actually spend a lot less time putting your blocks together because you're doing them all at the same time. It's really cool. Okay, so your first cut for your barn is 2 inches wide by 5 inches long. And this one here is measuring a little bit wider than 2 inches. It's actually 2 and just about 2.25 inches. I'm going to just cut, for now, I'm just going to cut it at the 5 inches and then leave it, because it's better to sew if it's within that amount. You might want to consider going ahead and sewing with a little bit larger piecing, as long as all of them are the same width larger. And then that gives you extra room. If you keep finding that even though you're sewing them all at the same place and doing all of the other things correctly, but yet you're still getting your blocks are coming out still a little bit short, this is one of the ways where you can guarantee that it won't come out short because you're making the block bigger. Okay, so keep that in mind. Different ways of doing it, and some of you might want to try it that way, and some of you might want to just go ahead and cut directly the measurements that it says. Either way, you can still get blocks that come out really well. So the first cut was 2 inches by 5 inches, and then we're going to cut two of the pieces are going to be 3 and 3.5. So we're going to measure this at 3.5. That's 1. Okay, that's 1. And we're going to measure. We're going to cut one more at 3.5. So 2 pieces at 3.5 inches wide, and then the last piece needs to be 2 inches, 2 inches square. So 2 inches wide by 2 inches long. Where's my trip average? There it is. Okay, so when cutting your barn pieces, this piece here, each color, you're going to have one that's 5 inches wide, 2 of them that are 3.5 inches wide, and a square 2 by 2 inches square. Okay. All right, next Next, for those of you who did not get the pre-cut roof pieces, you got pieces that look kind of like this, which is just a few of you, but I still want to go over this for those of you who need it. These need to measure, for your roof pieces, they need to measure 2 3/4 by 5 inches wide. So 5 inches wide, and then 2 3/4 inches long, or the other way. Okay, so I'm going to line this up, making sure that my side and the top are straight. And then I'm going to cut this here. And there I have one of my roof pieces. So 2 3/4 inches by 5 inches for your roof pieces. These, a few of you have pieces that are maybe you'll have a 6-inch square. You can actually get 2 roof pieces out of one 6-inch square, 6-inch square, by cutting the 2 1/2 or 2 3/4 inch first. Let's see if I'm right on that. And then move that to the side, and then I'm going to go ahead and measure this other side. It should measure just over 2 3/4. It measures, so I'm going to measure this one up at 2 3/4 inches. It's going to have a little bit to cut off here on the end. And then go ahead and trim this down to 5 inches wide. And that's how you can get 2 of them out of one 6-inch square. So there's one. And here's another one. Okay, and just like that. Okay, and then the last, the yellow squares are for your window. These should already be 2-inch squares. You should have 5 of them in your kit, so you don't even have to do anything with those. And then the grass, a lot of you have received your grass that's already 1 1/4 inches wide. I would leave them just like this, and when you go to sew it on the bottom of your block, you can just put it on there long, maybe just trim it off just a little bit wide, and then sew it along there, and then trim to the edge so you don't accidentally have too small of a piece. If you trim, some of you have long pieces that are long enough to actually get 2 blocks out of one of these. They should measure at least 10 inches. Go ahead and cut it off at 10 inches. And then after you've sewn it onto your block, when you do your final squaring up of your block, you can trim off that excess, and then it'll be 9 1/2 inch squares when you do that. Okay, so that's how you do that. So the only other thing we need to do, so for those of you who have the big pieces, you're just going to take it like this. You're going to measure out 1 1/4. And there you have the piece for one block. And then you're going to do that again with the rest of the green that you have until you have at least five strips that measure 1 1/4 inches. Okay, there's that. So that's how you cut that. Now, the biggest part that everybody will need to cut is your background. Some of you have different colored backgrounds, And so I'm going to show you with the gray. So some of you have a gray background instead of the white that you received in your kit. And we're going to do a lot of the cutting that we've done today. For those of you who are newer, we've done what's called subcutting. So subcutting is essentially where you cut a piece of fabric, usually the width of what you need it, and then you take that strip. It's usually when you cut a strip out of fabric, and then you cut that strip the size that you need. That's called subcutting, when you take that strip and you cut it into different sizes. You also do subcutting after you have sewn some pieces together. Then you would subcut them into a strip or something like that to then sew it into another pattern. And we have that coming up in one of our blocks that will be in the next couple of months, okay? So subcutting is a word that you'll definitely want to become familiar with, and that is exactly what we are doing here, okay? And you'll see that with this background fabric. So the first thing you want to do is you want to line up your edges, your selvage edges. Remember, we're going to trim off those selvage edges so you don't have those in your blocks. They're extra, they have the little holes in them that show, and on some of the fabrics they're thick, and so they're a little bit harder to sew on, and they're harder to press and everything. So we just cut that off so that we have a nice clean surface on both of the pieces when you're sewing them together to do everything that we need it to do. Okay. So I'm going to show you something that I came up with. I actually drew a diagram of all of the pieces that for one of your blocks, and then I marked out the size of what we need to cut each piece, and figured out the best way to get the most out of your fabric and actually be able to save some for later on. But before we get too far ahead, we're going to go ahead and we're going to trim off that selvage on the edge. And you're going to line it up nice and straight. Just get to right at the edge of that selvage. Make sure you have a real nice straight line. You've lined up with the bottom of your fabric down here. And we're just going to cut that all the way straight through the top. And cut that selvage off, and you just toss it. You don't need that for anything. So going back, I drew a diagram. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut our pieces. We're going to take out of the strip, we're going to cut pieces 7.5 inches wide. Go ahead and make that a little bit of a fat 7.5 inches. Now, when I say cut something fat, when you have your fabric laying and you're trying to measure it up with this line, some people will measure it just right into the kind of the middle of that. When I say fat, go ahead and measure it out with the opposite side of where you're cutting. So if you're cutting down here, where my pinky is showing, you want to line up, and I'm going to try to get this close so you can see. You want to line up your fabric on the opposite side, so it gives you that extra, probably like a millimeter of fabric that you have to work with. And that's cutting your fabric a fat cut, okay? So whenever you hear me call it a fat cut, that's what I mean by the way that you line it up on your ruler. That helps the little bit of fabric that you lose when you make a cut. That'll help balance that out, and your pieces will not end up too short, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to cut 7.5 inches wide on our fabric. I have this double pieced with the fold over on this side, okay, of the whole width of the fabric. And what we're going to do is we are going to line this up. Now, some people might run into this and there's run into this where you're going to cut a bigger piece and your ruler that you have isn't quite wide enough. There's a method where you can do it where you can actually use two rulers, butting them up next to each other to make sure that you get the measurement that you are needing. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So when you need to measure something 7.5 inches wide, this ruler is only 6 inches wide, and so I still need 1.5 inches wider before I make my cut. And so I'm going to line my fabric up, and not only do I need it 7.5 inches wide, but I need it 10 inches, and remember we are cutting it a fat 10 inches deep. So I'm going to make both of those measurements at the same time. So the first thing I want to do is I want to line up my 10. Remember, when lining it up, you want to put the fabric on the far side because we're cutting down here. You want to line up that fabric with the far side of the 10-inch line. That's going to give you that little bit of a fat cut. And so I'm going to line that up. And then what I do is I bring a second ruler, and I need another 1.5 inches to make my 7.5 inches wide. So I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to line this ruler up with 1.5 inches. Just like that. So 1.5 inches along the edge. Again, making that a wide cut, or a fat thing. So remember, I'm lining it up on the outer side of that 1/2 inch line. And then I'm going to move this over and butt it up against that one so it's like it's one whole ruler. And doing it this way, if you line everything up just right, you can not only get the correct measurement, the width, but then you can use this line here. You have a seamless line all the way across to be able to cut it here and then this way to get your cut that you need. So 7.5 inches wide. Just make sure that you don't just go ahead and go with it if the ruler moves. You want to stop and adjust it again to make sure you have the correct measurement. So 7.5 inches wide by 10 inches long, make your cut. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to cut this 7.5 inches wide, and then I'm going to shift over this way and cut my 10-inch cut down, just like that. And then pulling this away, we just have a little tiny bit here, a little bit here at the edge, and then a little bit at this corner. And now you have two pieces that are 7.5 inches wide by 10 inches long. You're going to make this same cut with 3 more pieces, so you have a total of 5 pieces that come to that measurement of 7.5 inches by 10 inches. And then when you go ahead and you take that, you're going to then subcut this piece into the different measurements that you need for your background. And remember, on your directions on the back side, the background tells you which measurements you need. So the first measurement it says is a 2 inches by 9.5 inches. We have this at 10 inches wide, and go ahead and leave it at 10 inches long. I'm sorry, 10 inches long, but make a cut at 2 inches for that measurement. So go ahead. I'm actually going to go from this side. Remember, you are lining it up on the opposite side. So you're lining it up on the outer part of your 2-inch line to make that cut, to make it a fat cut. And I'm lining it up not only with this line here at the edge of the fabric, but also this line here to make sure I have a nice straight cut. And with that cut, I have 2 of them. And remember, after making your bigger piece, 5 total, once you cut all of those, you should have 5 total pieces that measure 2 inches wide by 10 inches long. Put those to the side. The next measurement that is needed is you need to measure let's see, 2 3/4 inches. So 2 3/4 inches. I'm going to line that up. And you're going to cut the whole width this way. So not the long side, but the short side. You're going to measure it in 2 3/4 inches, always being a fat cut. Cut that out. We're going to move this big piece to the side. We're going to take this cut we just made, turn it sideways, and then we're going to measure in 2 3/4 inches to make our squares. Okay. And then you have, for one block, you need 2 squares of this. So total cut, you need 10 total. Cut 2 3/4 inches square. Okay. And then bringing this big piece back again, we're going to turn it back this way. The next cut we need to make is 2 inches wide. And it should be 7 1/4 inches wide is what this piece should be. So you only need to make the cut our long. 7 1/4 inches long is this piece, and then we just need the 2 inches, and then the other piece that remains is the 3 1/2. So actually, if we go by what I've always said, you want to make sure you do your bigger cut first. So you do your 3 1/2 inches. 1 2 3 1/2. Measuring this out, 3 1/2 inches, and then you're going to take these and put it to the side. And then this last one is you need to measure this out. And we have a bunch of neighbors that just showed up to visit in the background, so sorry about that. But then we're going to take this, and we have 2 inches left, and is the last cut you need. So you need 2 inches wide by 7 1/4. Actually, I'm sorry, you need a total 5 pieces that measure 2 inches wide by 7 1/4. You need 5 total inches that are 3 1/2 inches wide by 7 1/4. You need 10 total squares that are 2 3/4 inches squared, 10 of those. And then you need 5 that measure 10 inches long by 2 inches, okay? And that's what you need for the background for this block. All right, so if you have any questions about your cutting of the blocks, please send me a message or an email and let me know if you have any questions or comments. And I can't wait to see you guys. Also, if you'd like to be part of the group chat where we can share pictures and we can ask each other and get to know each other that's doing this block, let me know. It is on the Telegram app. And so if you want to download that app, I know that the links that I've been sending out haven't been working quite right. So if you want to go to your app store, or you can just search telegram.org on your desktop or your laptop and download that program. And it's just a chat. It's free. It doesn't cost anything, but it's a way for all of us from the different platforms to be able to all talk together in one place, share pictures and all that kind of stuff. Okay, the next video will be sewing the pieces together to make the block, and I will see you soon. Thanks.